Tell your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. Joel 1:3. The Holocaust.
For nearly 2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of His people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. And now, here is your host, Rosalie Jerome.
Shalom, and welcome to our show, The Crossover, a show aimed at bridging gaps between Jews and Christians. Today we have a very special program for you because I'm standing here with a class from the Kingwood 9th grade campus in Houston, Texas. They just last week heard the testimony of Walter Case, a Holocaust survivor, and we hope and we pray that they will never forget his testimony. We're going to hear these students' thoughts and feelings today. Enjoy.
None of us have a choice in who we are. Who we are is God's choice. God decides on the color of our skin. God decides on our nationality. So to be hateful, to be disrespectful, to be mean to people whom God chose to be different than we are, is sinful, it is ungodly, and it leads to horrible tragedies like the Holocaust.
I just wanted to let all of you know that I'm real thankful for Mrs. Johnson for having Walter Case come and speak here. I myself, my parents are Holocaust survivors. They, though, didn't have to encounter the experience that Walter Case did because two families practiced their faith and actually hid them for a year. So because of people who stepped out to protect these people, I'm here today. So I hope that these testimonies that you hear, that you're going to be hearing, and encounters that you have in the future with unjust things happening, that you will not be a bystander. A bystander here on this triangle is equivalent to what? Persecutor or perpetrator. So I just wanted to say there are people that actually didn't have to go through what Walter went through. In fact, in Bulgaria and Holland, many of the Jews were saved because the government rose up, the church rose up, and the people rose up and said, no, you won't do this. And Bulgaria was part of the Nazi alignment. So can we make a difference even though things are looking bad with our governments or the world around?
The war to me started on September 1st, 1939. That was the day that Germany attacked Poland. German officers came into our home. They put a gun to my father's head, and we were told that we have an hour to pack a suitcase of necessities and that we must vacate our home and give the business that my father owned to the German authorities.
Can you please tell me what is it that inspired you to have Walter Case here?
Several years ago, I was watching the Academy Awards, and I saw Gerda Weissman-Klein accept the Academy Award for her documentary about her story, about growing up in Poland and about working in camps. Got her video and show it to my students every year. After that, I was able to meet her in Austin. She was speaking there at a Texas Council of Social Studies, and I got to meet her. So it's always been a part of my philosophy that good people don't stand up when it's time to stand up. And if we educate people to stand up, we're doing what we should be doing. So to me as a teacher, this is my job.
Thank you so much. Thank you for teachers like you.
Hunger, starvation, hard labor, horribly unsanitary conditions, and every kind of atrocity that you could possibly think of started occurring every single day. After 2.5 years of living in the ghetto, the German officer made an announcement that all children under the age of 14 and all elderly over the age of 65 should go to the left side of the field and everybody else to the right side. My father found 2 bricks and he had me stand on the 2 bricks, which made me look like a grown-up person, made me look the height of an average person. Unfortunately, my little sister, Risha, was only 8 years old. My mother was hiding her under her coat. A German officer came over. He tore my little sister out of my mother's grasp. They lined up machine guns, and there in front of God and everybody, they killed all the children and all the elderly. Now, I have told this story probably 1,000 times, but I have never been able to recapture the agony and the hopelessness on my parents' faces when they stood there watching their little girl being killed for nothing, just because she had the misfortune to be born to a Jewish family.
Have you or anyone that you personally know ever experienced persecution?
Well, yes, I know I've been persecuted and I've been made fun of because I was born with Tourette syndrome, and people look at me and they see me doing like the symptoms of Tourette syndrome, and they think, just what's wrong with this kid? And like a lot of people just think I'm weird.
Let me ask you, can you explain what Tourette syndrome is?
Yes, Tourette syndrome is a neurological disorder, and it causes your body to involuntarily do like twitches or like motions or sounds, and you can't help it. And like I know I have it, but a lot of people have it and are a lot worse off than me. And it's basically like, see, you can't catch it, but people still ridicule you and stay away from you. You have to be born with it, though.
And during the Nazi regime, people who had Tourette's syndrome, do you think they were able to survive?
No, I don't think that they were given a chance. I think that anybody with any kind of disorder was seen as abnormal and just weird, and that they were probably just killed on the spot.
Do you see any difference between that attitude and some of the attitudes you see maybe in the school?
Any differences?
Any difference between that Nazi extreme attitude of destroying you totally and people who will destroy you emotionally by not being your friend or just judging you for some symptoms you have?
Well, yes, some differences I notice. Obviously, the people that make fun of people today are just destroying you mentally, but the Nazis just wanted, they didn't want to deal with that, and they just killed anyone that they saw as weird on the spot.
Thank you. Actually, they also did a lot of emotional torment, but thank you very much. Anyone else want to answer that? One more person for that question.
I have been personally persecuted as being a Muslim in my beliefs. I've had many people who look at me as very weird and different, especially since 9/11. They take it as all Muslims are terrorists and they destroy people, and they do not recognize that there are good people. And I think it's the same thing as the Germans and the Jewish people in the Holocaust. They kill people because they were not the same as them. They were discriminated, they were killed, and I think it's just very wrong. Just because you're different, you're a different race, you're a different color, you believe different, and people are all different, and there's no reason that people should be the same, and it's very wrong to just torment people because they're different.
Have you been experiencing people actually doing that with you or your parents? Do your parents wear a special garb that they would know the difference? Or
Yes, I've walked in stores before and people just stare at me constantly and then give evil looks and start, talking secrets behind me and whispering. And even at school today, I have spoken about my religion, and people do look at me different ever since I've told them that I am Muslim.
Well, thank you so much for speaking out.
More of the crossover when we return.
And the main thrust of it was the Nazi Party in America, which was nicknamed, or the code, not code name, but the name for it was the Bund. And they had 68 chapters across the country. Unfortunately, they had several here in Texas. They had 28 camps. And one of the main ways for them to promote their agenda was through these camps. They would take youth there. In fact, in my book, in the center fold there, you'll look and you'll see the youth marching into Camp Siegfried. Do you see it there?
And John, they are in full uniform, Nazi
yes.
uniform,
yes, right here.
Saluting.
See them? No, this is the Bund. This is the Nazi youth marching in. There's thousands of them. You see it?
Yeah.
This isn't like a couple hidden in the woods someplace. This is Camp Siegfried.
How many acres was this place?
Camp Siegfried was 50, 60 acres.
Wow.
It was I call it ground zero for the Nazi movement. Mitch,
This was headquarters in America?
Excuse me?
This was their headquarters in America?
Well, yeah, New York and Camp Siegfried was the main nerve center for the Bund. At one point, Mitch, in August of 1938, there were 40,000 Nazis at Camp Siegfried.
Wow.
40,000.
And Long Island, John, is filled with Jewish people, big time.
Right.
And right there in their camp is this Nazi venom rising.
Right. And Mitch, that meeting in August of 1938 was the largest Nazi meeting outside of Germany on our soil. In fact, I have an advertisement in my book, the advertisement for that meeting.
Yes.
And on the opposite side of it, Mitch, you look up on top there, that is this is kind of unique, but in the book I have the train schedule, in the advertisement is the train schedules for the trains coming out to Camp Siegfried. The Nazis would rent entire trains from New York City. And here you have the train pulling in to Camp Siegfried.
Saluted.
It looks like Germany. You would not believe that this is America.
This is, if you didn't see the picture,
you
wouldn't believe this.
And right below it is the Nazi headquarters. That picture you're looking at now is the headquarters of the Nazis in America. The Nazis were so entrenched at Camp Siegfried that they built a little village alongside this camp for the Nazis.
German Gardens?
It's called German Gardens.
Okay.
And they named the streets. Now, some of them are like Berliner Street now, which really isn't offensive. But they actually named the street Adolf Hitler Street, Goring Street, and Goebbels Street. And to this day, that is the official name of that street.
Welcome back to The Crossover.
Do you see any similarities between the present-day worldwide Islamic Jihad with the homicide bombings, the cutting off of heads, and the Holocaust of World War II?
One of the similarities that I see between the Islamic Jihad today and the Nazi Holocaust during World War II, and one of the things I don't understand is how anybody could have such hate for people they've never met, for people they've never seen, for people who haven't done anything wrong to them. And I can't even begin to comprehend the hatred that's involved and that goes behind that towards one certain race of people. I don't understand how the Islamic Jihad could hate Christians and hate Americans and hate the entire Western civilization just because we're different from them. I don't understand how the Nazis could hate the Jews because they were different. And when you think about it, especially after 9/11 happened, when you think about it, it's hard to even imagine why people would fly planes into buildings, killing thousands of innocent civilians who did nothing more than good work that day and practice free enterprise go about their normal daily lives. It's just hard to imagine how anybody could hate somebody so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the question is, what similarities are there between Islamic Jihad and Nazism? For example, educational system.
Well, they both have the camps. They tried to brainwash them as a youth, to create a sense of superiority amongst them, like to be a natural thing. No, well, they start them out early as their youth to, as I said, to create a sense of superiority among their race only, and then they just try to blame all of their problems on just something else, because they can't take the blame, so they start them out like that in the school, and they teach it as a fact, like it's in their textbooks and stuff, just to, but they use a sense of violence, and they don't, even though they blame it, they don't even try a peaceful solution. They just automatically assume the only way to fix anything is to violently strike back towards not even minorities, just differences, just different nationalities and different beliefs, because they feel that their way is the only right way to do things. Like in their government, the people don't have a say or rights, and they're okay with that because they feel like it's sinful to do the other, to just have a voice. And so they just strike back violently.
Well, I do notice it's similar because both the commanding groups made it so that the people that could speak out and could make a difference would be in just total fear to speak out, just out of fear that they would suffer the same fate as who their enemy is. Like, for example, I'm sure there were a lot of Germans that wanted to speak out, but they were in such fear that if they did, they would be killed just for speaking out for the right thing. And I'm sure there are plenty of Palestinians that would speak out, but they're too afraid to because they would be killed.
One similarity I see between the Islamic Jihad and the Nazis is that of focusing just on the youth. And the youth are always very persuadable, and so the leaders of all these organizations, they ingrained in their minds what they should believe and how they should act, how they should feel towards people. And so this is what caused them to grow up like this, and many other generations to keep causing this persecution and suffering. And the Palestinians, there are many kids who when they're young, they wouldn't mind playing or being friends with a Jew, but as they grow up, it's seen that it alters how they view, and as they grow up in this environment, then they would gladly be a suicide bomber or homicide bomber. And so it's important that the youth of America, we can still ingrain in our peers and our fellow youth that we can make a difference, and that we don't have to just follow what people tell us, and that we can realize. And I'm very glad that Mr. Case gave this testimony, because he's showing to the youth who are going to actually take action and make a difference.
For nearly 2,000 years, Jews and Christians have been divided. But now, God is calling for the healing of past hurts and the comforting of His people. Discover how God is prophetically uniting Jews and Christians across the world today on The Crossover. The Crossover exists to communicate to the Jewish community that there is a growing group of Christians who love them unconditionally. The focus of the Crossover program is to promote a greater understanding of the differences and similarities between Jewish and Christian customs, history, and theology, while encouraging a closer walk with the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. As a second-generation Holocaust survivor, Rosalie's Jewish heritage includes parents who were protected from the Nazis by Christians. Yet for more than a decade, Mitch and Rosalie searched for meaning in life in the New Age movement. But after returning to their Judeo-Christian roots, they discovered God's purpose for their lives: to rebuild bridges between Christians and Jews. Now, through TV, radio, the internet, speaking engagements, the healing room, and print and video resources, they are reuniting Jews and Christians in fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Join Mitch and Rosalie as they tackle tough topics and welcome dynamic guests on The Crossover. The Promised Land.
And I also tried to make it very clear to the Christians all over the world that they are threatened to the same extent as the Jews and Israel are threatened. And I also say basically that Jews and Christians are waiting for the Messiah, who is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. And that Messiah is going to come to Jerusalem. And so Christians share this faith with the Jews.
The Hebraic roots of Christianity.
And we began looking at Jesus through Jewish spectacles and not our Texas spectacles or American spectacles or even Western culture spectacles. He's so much more glorious. He's so much more grand. It does not in any way detract from the fact that he's the Son of God, the risen Savior, but he's also a man.
Judaism 101.
Many times people ask, what is a Jew? Is it a race? Is it a people? Is it a culture?
Jewish-Christian relations. Bible, fact or fiction? For more information on The Crossover and The Crossover Project, contact Rosalie Jerome at 832-287-5057 or visit us on the web at www.thecrossovertv.org. Welcome back to The Crossover.
The unfortunate things of being small, like I was in being in a camp, that you were always in front, witnessing all the executions. One time they were hanging a man for stealing a piece of bread. The man who made the noose a little bit too long. So when the German guard kicked the stool out from the man to hang him, the man was still on his toes. A German officer called me and another boy out, and he ordered this other boy to pick up the man's legs, and then he ordered me to embrace this body and hang on the body, so my weight would help to kill this man quicker. Something like this, when you are 13 years old, makes an indelible impact on your mind. And you realize that man's inhumanity to man has no boundaries.
Who would like to name one portion of Mr. Case's testimony that you will never forget?
One portion of Mr. Case's Holocaust testimony that I will never forget is he talked about when he was separated from his mother and he didn't even have time to tell her goodbye. And I don't think at the time he even realized that he would never see her again. And I think about what if I would never see my mom again, and I don't think I really tell her enough that I love her and that I'm grateful for everything that she does. And all this about him never seeing his family again after the Holocaust. My family is the most important thing in my life, and I can't even imagine it. It would be awful.
One part of Mr. Case's Holocaust testimony that really made a difference to me was that he said that when you were shot, it only took a minute to kill you. When you hung, it only took 2 minutes. When in a gas chamber, it took you 3 minutes. But when you starved, it was every single second of your life that you knew you were dying. And when he watched his father, watched himself getting thinner, it's just, that would have been something that just would have impacted you. I mean, along with all the horrors, just that would have been one thing that would have been kind of scary.
One part of Mr. Case's Holocaust testimony that I'll never forget was the pain on his face when he told us how his father, after 30 days of being liberated, passed away. I couldn't imagine what it would be like surviving almost 2 years in a concentration camp with your father, the only person left of your family, and then after finally being liberated and finally feeling that you can once again turn to normal life, your father passing away and being all alone. And it would just be horrible if that happened to me.
Did Walter Case's testimony change you in any way?
Well, Mr. Case's Holocaust testimony changed me because I have taken my family for granted. I don't tell them I love them all the time. And after hearing him and hearing all the hardships and the family bond that he spent with his father and how important that was to him and his survival, I realized that I need to tell my mother I love her more, and I have been. And we have been sitting around the dinner table, and we've been talking about each other's days recently because of what he said and how important the family bond was.
Well, Mr. Case's Holocaust testimony has changed me because when people are being made fun of and mistreated, I stand up for them now more because they shouldn't be mistreated just because they're different, and that's just kind of like the Jews. They were mistreated just because they were different, and if people don't stand up for what they think is right, then the Holocaust may easily be done over and repeated, and we don't want that to happen, so you should stand up for what you think is right.
But here millions of people lost their lives, and we as human beings have not learned how to coexist, how to respect each other, how to love each other. All we do is hate and kill. A few years ago, a young girl asked me, "Why do you think you survived while so many millions perished?" She said, "God spared you for a purpose. He spared you because you connect with us. Because after we hear you speak, we become better, more concerned human beings."
We will never forget. Thank you for staying tuned with The Crossover. For those of you who want more information about today's program, contact us at thecrossover@earthlink.net or www.thecrossovertv.org. Shalom.
Join Mitch and Rosalie as they reach an ever-growing worldwide audience through The Crossover. We invite you to become a Crossover partner right now by calling the number on your screen. For your monthly gift of $30 or more, you will receive the Crossover Partnership Pack, which includes a DVD of today's program, a personal greeting and prayer message from Mitch and Rosalie, more information about the Crossover Project. As you continue to support the Crossover each month, you will receive a new Crossover DVD, plus a ministry report, and your name will be added to our healing room. Call now and join the growing family of Crossover partners.